Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's the good place to start is like talking about the role of a chief people officer and really what they're really trying to deliver. Because I think you're right. Having empathy for what that senior executive position really entails is important to being, I think, more effective as a partner with them. The first, I think that every great HR leader and chief people officer believes that HR exists to ensure the organization has the talent and capabilities to win. So, we're focused on winning in the marketplace. And then I'd say they're business people first. They just happen to be executives that deliver value through human capital or people strategies and tactics. You're not, I think a lot of times, I'll be interviewed, someone might interview me and hey, what questions do you have? And it's very rare, and I've heard other chief people officers who said this, it's very rare that someone asks a question about the business, right? They'll ask questions around culture, soft things. And I've even had people say, well, what's onboarding like here? And I'm like, who cares? Like, why are you asking me that is the worst question I've ever been asked.
Yeah.
That's not going to help you figure out the job. Like, you just don't know what to ask an HR person. But that just shows you how they think about it. The reality is, really great HR people are really good business people. And especially when you get up into a Fortune 500, Fortune 100 company, these are incredible, incredible executives who just happen to do HR. So that's the first piece. Second, great HR leaders are really the social architect of the top team. They understand how to bring that team together. They're working with the CEO and the CFO and the rest of that leadership team to make sure things are working well, that there's a clear aligned business strategy, the team's high performing. It is not an easy task at that level.
No.
But all good HR leaders also are going to say, hey, whatever the organization's list of priorities is, like, and how we win, that becomes their list. So some people would say, well, what's an HR strategy? Your HR strategy is your business strategy, just translated to the people piece. So if the business strategy is to grow a certain market by 5%, that's what HR's business plan should be, is just, that's the same goal. It's just now a level down of like, okay, what roles do we need? What kind of capabilities do we have to get to that 5%, right? So it's much more a business focused kind of role if they're going to be doing something, if they're a great chief people officer. The other thing to think through is like, well, how do they grow up? Most chief people officers, and it's changing, will have come from a couple different areas in the function, but they're going to have like a T-shaped career. So they're going to have depth in compensation and rewards. They're going to have depth as a generalist. They're going to have depth as a talent person. And then at some point, they rose up and they start to become a generalist and kind of go across the T. And so great CHROs have at least one depth or discipline that they're great in, and they've learned to be generalists across the board on the others. And so that's why it takes a while to become a chief people officer. You have to have that depth because you got to lead that team. They have to respect you. You have to understand how things work. Like, you don't have to understand everything about benefits, but hopefully you've been through at least one or two cycles of benefit implementations and know the questions to ask, right? And so that's really critical. Chief people officers also, they don't just manage their own team and the executive team. They work a lot with the board of directors, especially in a public company. So a lot of their time is managing the board of directors, executive compensation, succession planning. So, when you actually look at their studies, CHROs are not spending as much time with their team as possible. They're spending much more with their time with their peers, maybe the board, sometimes even externally, depending on what's going on. And frankly, more and more CHROs are being asked to lead the organization's response to social issues, right? Or political issues, or whatever issues. They're really always typically social issues, but it's very challenging. So how do we need to respond? Should we respond? So my point of all this, I mean, CHROs, especially since the pandemic, have been asked to take on more and more and do more and more with sometimes less and less. So it's a really, really difficult job. So they've got a short attention span. If you're going to reach out to them, your original question, how do you work with them, is that don't sell, but actually help them solve their business problems, right? So, I think the wrong approach is kind of hopefully thinking that they have hours and hours to spend with you. They don't, right? They're going to make decisions pretty quickly because they're toggling so many different things in a day. And so they're kind of the king and queen of multitasking. So as you're coming in there and trying to solve their problems, it's more about making sure they're aware of what you could do. How could you possibly help them when that need arrives? And I always use this analogy of a divorce lawyer. You could be the world's best divorce lawyer. I'm not calling you, I love my wife. I have no need for a divorce lawyer. Okay. And I think it's kind of the same way when you're selling to, or being a consultant. You can't call them and say, hey, I've got this solution and keep banging down the door. Doesn't make any sense. It's more like, hey, look, we've got this. This is what we're great at. If you ever need us, let's talk. That's the way to approach it, and be just data driven and financially oriented, and so coming to a CHRO and saying, let's do training for training's sake, probably is going to fail, right? If it's not tied to a business leader. So those are just a few perspectives I have on how you might do this.